Matthew, everyday audiophile, music lover, and beer enthusiast. It's been a long time coming, and I'm finally ready to start talking about Lacquer's Supersense vinyl. But before we do, let's ignore the terrible pour and talk about the beer. Just like the music I'm going to talk about today, this beer is wholesome even though it comes from Shiner. This is their Hill Country Peach Wheat. And it is smooth, it is nice to drink, it is just a little bit, the right amount of fruity. I do intend to enjoy this, especially on a summer day, which we are getting into pretty shortly here in Texas. Yep, that is delicious. Okay, Lacquer. So for a while now, I have been talking about Supersense and the Lacquers. And then I'm going to be finally talking about them and also dropping a needle drop for anyone to listen to and compare to some of, the comparable recording. Today, I want to talk about the first in the live series from Supersense. It's not the first one that I purchased from them, but it is one of the first ones that I actually ended up listening to. This is the Palace Edition. So this isn't the first version they came out with. This was the second version of the first recording, so it's just a different packaging. But this is Gregory Porter. Before listening to this, I actually didn't really know who he was, so this was my first introduction to him, and I'm a little bit sad that that's the case because he is a wonderful artist, and nothing that I've heard is compared to this. But if we open it, we will see that on the front we have information about the tracks, when it was recorded, who cut this on the lathe. Let's be careful taking this out. When you open it up, you get a nice image of Gregory Porter at the mic, and then the first thing that you see is the lacquer itself. Let me set this back down. So, inside of each package, you get a set of gloves. These are the recommended way of handling the lacquer. And you additionally get a little booklet. This booklet comes with just kind of a bunch of little collectibles. Image of Gregory Porter singing. There's a photograph taken of an up-close picture of the lacquer showing the grooves, kind of a QA check, as you will. And just a few other notes and messages about not only the recording event back in 2016, I believe, but also just notes from the people that started Supersense on why they're doing what they're doing, and, just thank you for supporting. It's really, really nice what's in here. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about the music. So the way that they did these live recorded concerts is they recorded straight to tape. There's no editing, there's no mastering, and then that gets cut on the lathe straight to lacquer. So what we're hearing here is exactly, hopefully, as it was heard by the people watching this performance live. And I have to say, it's quite a special recording. At a high level, for these 4 tracks, you just get a sense of liveliness that you don't get out of any other recording, especially digital recording. And there's 4 tracks on here. So there's, on the first side, there's Don't Lose Your Steam and Mother's Song. On side B, it's Musical Genocide and No Love Dying. To my knowledge, Don't Lose Your Steam and No Love Dying are easy tracks to find from other albums. And so the first one is the one that I'm going to be doing a needle drop of. I'm going to have a link down below in the description. And it's a 30-second piece starting from about a minute and 10 seconds into it. I can't do the full track, but the 30 seconds, if you compare that with the regular release on the album, will give you a good sense, as good a sense as it can be, of what I'm hearing here in person. I have ripped the entire thing, and I will say the digital recording lacks a little bit of that spatialness that you get from playing it on the record player, so it's not as quite as three-dimensional front to back or side to side. but the emotion in the singer is 90% there. I still get goosebumps listening to the ripped version compared to the vinyl. It's just not quite as you're there and listening to them as person. Before talking about my notes on the listening experience and why I like this lacquer so much, let's talk about the system really quick so we just get a baseline. The speakers that I'm using are the Rosso Fiorentino Certaldo 2s. These are extremely revealing, I have found, and even though they only use a 5 1/4 inch driver, they sound really, really good, I gotta say. Driving them, my trusty Triode Lab EL84 monoblocks. I did have these on solid state for a while because I liked how the solid state, the Audio A21 sounded. But as these broke in a little bit more, I have found that I preferred the tubes again. So we're back on tubes for these speakers for this lacquer experience. The preamp is the Live Harmony HP2A. I just find that it works really well with these monoblocks. And the preamp, the phono preamp, is the Riga Aura. And then behind that again is the Riga RP10 and the Riga Afida 3. I will someday upgrade my turntable. I don't know what it's going to be to. This for right now, the RP10 is my reference. It sounds great. I'm not prepared to take that next step. Someday. Okay. Some early listening notes. And this is something that will come through on the needle drop. And it sounds bad, but it's not really an issue when you're listening to it in person. There is a little bit of surface noise that you can pick up from the record. It is, worse than some of the best vinyl recordings that I have, but it's still not bad. It doesn't detract from the overall performance. And in fact, I think it gives you that sense of authenticity that this was really a live performance. So just something to note when you listen to the needle drop. It's not something that bothers me. I have experienced this on a number of the lacquers. Not all of them have that noise, especially the ones that aren't the live performances. The live performances have that noise, but the other ones, they're a little bit quieter. There's no issues. As I listen to this, I kept on getting this sense of just how lifelike the voice is and how real the space is that these speakers and the equipment and the recording are created. You can tell the size of the room. It felt like it was a 20 by 20 or 20 by 30, and that Gregory Porter was placed about 10 feet back, maybe 15 feet back in this recording. It's just, the space is so nice to listen to. And I just kept on closing my eyes and just imagining that I was there. That's not always the case with the vinyl recording, but with the good ones, you definitely get it. And that is definitely the case here. His voice is so nice to listen to. And you can pick up the little quivers in his voice, the little, not vibratos if it was a bass. I'm not sure what the term is for your voice, but it's something that I don't really get from the digital recordings from his albums. You can't really hear it, so that it definitely gives you a more personable, more lifelike presentation, and that's something that I picked up immediately, and it stuck throughout the entire recording. I also wanted to call out the instruments. It's just two, right? So you have Gregory Porter, you have a piano, and you have a double bass. And I couldn't help but think the double bass was one of the most realistic presentations of the bass I've ever heard from a recording. And I would know. I played double bass for over a decade. I've been in orchestras and whatnot. So the sound of that instrument I'm very attuned to, and I can tell if something isn't right, or even by listening their hand position and making sure that that's correct. I'm happy to say that there were no issues in this recording, and you definitely got the soul of the music from the bassist, from the pianist, and from the singer, Gregory himself. As far as which tracks connected to me most, it would be the first one and the third one. I don't know if this is really the case, but part of me believes that that's due to them being on the outside of the lacquer, right? So given an inch of travel on the needle, you get more information on the further out on the record you are, or on the lacquer in this case. And so it's not that tracks 2 and 4 weren't as emotional. They definitely were. I just got a little bit more of the hair standing up goosebumps from track 1 and track 3. Again, nothing bad. It's just something that I noticed. When I listened to the ripped track, we're going to just go stick to track 1 for now. Don't lose your steam. When I compare the lacquer to the rip, and then the rip to the same track from his album that he released, you definitely step down in terms of quality each time, right? The lacquer being the best, the rip being close but not as good. But the difference is huge, truly, comparing the rip to the digital album. The digital album, it kind of feels dead in comparison. It's still great to listen to. If I didn't have the lacquer, then I would have never thought this to be the case with that album. But he just sounds not very lifelike in comparison to the rip. And so that rip, the needle drop, will continue to be my reference for what Gregory Porter should sound like when I don't have the time to put on a lacquer and put on the gloves and whatnot. And so it is for that reason alone that I think it is a great purchase. It's an expensive purchase, right? $500 for 4 tracks is a lot of money. It's $125 a piece. Whether that's worth it to you, it's hard to say. I think the collectible memorabilia that comes inside the little book is a nice touch, but not enough to make you want to spend money on the limited batch. Which, by the way, this is limited. The Palace edition is out of 99, and the original edition was also out of 99. So I have number 25 out of the 99. It means there's only so far 200 of these, 198 in circulation. And so you know that it is somewhere. Not everyone is going to get a chance to listen to this. But if it's worth it or not, that's really up to you, the person that's spending the money. I do think it's worth it purely for that greater sense of realism and detail and being a little bit closer to the master than you would normally get from the vinyl. There have been some comments, some talk online about how long these lacquers last. Do they only last a handful of plays, or can you listen to them for dozens of plays, a decade later? Right now I'm sitting in the camp of a decade later, purely because there is a review that's put out where someone played a lacquer 100 times, and he took measurements of the first time and the 100th time, and it showed virtually no wear. My only real thoughts on that review, which I will link below, is that he used a needle with a tracking force of only 1.2 grams. So a very light tracking force. And I think that's the secret to making lacquers last a long time. The Riga Afida 3 that I have sits at about 1.85 to 1.9 grams, so it's a little bit lighter than the standard 2 grams that you see on most cartridges today. And I think the reason that we commonly believe that lacquers get destroyed after a handful of plays is that back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, tracking forces were 6 to 8 grams. So you're looking at hundreds, thousands of times more pressure per square inch on that needle compared to what we're getting today. That would probably be the only thing that I do look to change in my system. Let's say I move to a VPI turntable. I would definitely look for a cartridge that sits in that 1.6 to 1.7 gram. I know they exist and I know they sound good. It's just always a question of money. But that's it. That's my review of the Supersense Gregory Porter live album. I do think it's wonderful. I think the packaging is great, and I can't wait to talk about the second one in the live series at some point in the near future. But until then, I will see y'all later.